Whoa. Yeah, I really hate those. You know, you're saying one of these days, one of them logs is going to get me. But anyway, yeah, I'm really against it. Yeah, look, there's another one. You know, anyway, it's actually an old one. False alarm. Anyway, Professor Anton, yeah. Subject. Not really the politics thing, so this won't be a political video, but it's this whole debate idea. Already talked about it, dialogued on it before. You know, how to approach resolution, dispute resolution organization. Yeah. And so it relates to the whole Steph bot thing, the whole anarchy thing. You know, the whole idea that that's really government's primary function. Is to set up the standards by which we will define the thing called civilization. And that's going to include how we're going to tax and what conduct we'll allow and what conduct won't be allowed and all of that crap. You know, what the mechanism's going to be. And, yeah, and then it even relates to the democracy and how that functions. And it is a system, and it's a system that can produce results, or it's a system that can stink. And even in argumentation, there's sort of a government, sort of the idea that this is going to be the rules, that you can't have a pig farmer dialoguing, you know, with somebody who wants to raise their 3 kids in a nice suburban neighborhood with all the proper facilities, like a nice little park and a school and playgrounds, and well, I guess a park would be a type of playground. I have to get rid of this tree because it's going to... Look, see, it's got all these little gnarlies on it that want to catch my feet. So if I jump, I could end up face first, you know, torpedoed right into the ground. And it would probably hurt much more than I need it to hurt. And it would hurt after the fact, which doesn't do me any good. So, again, Greatex fails. But he fails at everything. It's his life's mission. It will be a perfect failure. Get a perfect fail score. Yep, you're well on your road. Bravo. Anyway, and he's a separate subject. But it is this dialogue thing. You know, like... how do you do it when our personalities get in the way? Because, yeah, I've grown to truly despise the liar that is Greatex. The despicable weasel, the coward, the cheater of an argument. Yeah, he just made a video, like he ends it with saying, that's what happens when you have a truth, when you believe in a truth. It's just so stupid. There's a ton of truths we believe in now. Slavery is unacceptable. Child molesting is unacceptable. We have a ton of them. Everybody's comfortable with those truth declarations. So this is a truth declaration that I hold that the rest of civilization, as of yet, is not comfortable with. Well, my argument is, when they are comfortable with it, it'll be just as obvious to them as it is to me. You know, that you don't impose unnecessary suffering. Not complicated. And all suffering is unnecessary. It's all stupid. It's all a waste of time. It's all a delusion in your head that you're accomplishing something, shitheads. But anyway, you can only accomplish something in the narrow environment in which we exist, which means you're basically a janitor. You can only resolve needs that have been created. There's, you know, that's the liability. You can only clean up messes. We're all cleaners. So anyway, back to the real argument, or subject. You know, this how to debate thing. So, more context. Me and Piro have had numerous conversations on the subject of creating a format or an arena or a cyberspace that is more conducive to resolution of dispute. And that's sort of what you want out of a dialogue. You want to resolve. You want to be able to focus. You want to be able to see the pixels, to understand what's happening, and to make clear evaluations, uncluttered by grotesque exaggerations, and preposterous and useless innuendos and slanders. Yeah, which are just so common among the bark lords and the gray texts and the broken necks. Just lie your way through an argument. And so, yeah, dialogue that reveals the person's cheats, reveals the other side's manipulations and distortions and perversions, their omissions, their grotesque omissions, where they keep running from the real argument, when they keep running from the direct questions and the direct requests for clarity. Like, how exactly do you qualify yourself to be a producer of consciousness? Where did you go to I know how to do it school? Oh, that's right, you didn't. I can control it school. Did you go to... No, you didn't go to that either. That's right, you have no license. You have no qualification to play God. And so if somebody says, I'm going to stop you from playing God, yes, they're playing God, but it's a more legitimate role, because you know that's wrong. The first cause is what we're looking for. The first fault is what we're looking for. That's usually what breaks a system. So you look in the system. What's the flaw of the system? So here's a system of dialogue or conversation on YouTube. And the problem with the system is, yeah, it's a bad association, in the sense that we haven't established rules of conduct that are consistently applied. So one person can use strangulated verbiage, get a little bit Shakespearean, and make a perfectly beautiful, slanderous mischaracterization. And as long as they do it in eloquent verbiage, witty and articulate, well, then it's okay. If they do it with a gesture, oh, so you want to kill everyone? Yeah, okay, that's somehow okay. And if you just say, hey, will you quit lying, you fucking ugly bastard? That's not okay. And so that kind of duplicity, double standard, is useless. It just corrupts the system. It breaks the dialogue. When people can speak different kinds of language and throw different kinds of weapons, but they're just as malicious. There's no point in outlawing broadswords and then saying, but switchblades are okay, or some kind of other kind of crap. It's stupid. It's stupid. And so that's one of the flaws. You get obvious flaws in a system of debate. And then you have this whole personality thing, charisma thing, literacy thing, all these little subtleties that shouldn't matter, but they do, because that's the real world. And that's unfortunate, and we should try to make mechanisms that diminish that, but it's hard to do. So anyway, one of the premises of his argument, to get to his point, was that somehow there's an intrinsic flaw in the idea of obliging ideas to battlefield. He didn't use any terms like that, but that's I think there's no choice. You have to have the battlefield. Ideas have to fight with each other. They have to win. Okay, and it's not about individuals winning. It's about ideas winning. And the people who are going to fight, the people who are going to be the best soldiers, I think obviously, are people who have a passion for the ideas. So I think it's going to tend to be that way, that the people are going to be highly invested in their argument. They're not in some debate club arbitrarily picking a side and saying, well, let's have a fight. That has a ludicrousness built right into it, because the fight is inherently difficult, and you wouldn't do it without a passion, without a cause. You wouldn't sign up for a war if you weren't getting paid and you couldn't win anything. You didn't care who won. There would be no point in fighting, because it does cost you something. But then the other side of this argument is is that being personally invested in the mission raises the stakes and creates an environment more likely for you to go ballistic and just say, I have nothing to lose and I'll go on a rampage. It's harder for you to fight by narrow rules when you're fighting for the truth. I mean, if it required us to use mustard gas to stop Nazi Germany, we probably would have done it. Obviously, we went nuclear to stop the Japanese, even when we already had them pretty well whipped. When it means too much, that's when it does get dangerous. But that's a liability that you have to control through rules, through some sort of Geneva Warring Convention or some other authority that imposes. And obviously in war between great nations, there's no greater authority to control how out of hand the war gets. But in our debate atmosphere, there can be mechanisms that are checks and balances against us cheating, against us picking up the can of mustard gas and giving it a chuck. They are two different things, but I think the metaphor holds that there does need to be the battlefield, and that the battlefield can resolve the truth, that through the fight, through the argument, you will find honor, and you will find the value. The Lincoln-Douglas debates, for example. A lot of personal animosity there, but it wasn't about personal victory for either one of those men, I don't think. They were arguing their passion, their intellectual passion. And I think it was probably very revealing to the people who read the transcripts of those debates in the paper, who were told of them, and heard bits of the argument and quotes and whatnot. So there's value in the fight. The war does resolve the issues. You need to do it. You need to get in there and throw the evidence at each other and test the evidence. And those are all good things. And dialogue, or this idea that you can do it in some way that's unbenign, isn't practical. I don't think. If you're going to talk about something that's important to people, I mean, you might have a dialogue about, well, there's lots of colors of brown, isn't there? We could dialogue about what color, what name we should give the different colors of brown. We could have a dialogue about that, and we all could not give a shit, and it would be incredibly boring, useless, and tedious. So I just don't, you really can't, I don't think, you can't step into the kitchen without it being hot. Just can't. It's going to get hot. We can reduce the heat. We can try to keep it under control. Keep the mustard gas away from the players. Search them and make sure they don't have any, rabid bears in their pocket or some other malicious weapon or intent. And, let the game begin. But yeah, there needs to be the fight. And that's almost part of what's flawed in our political system, is we don't get to have the fight. The fight isn't taken to the floor of the Congress. The fight is taken to the back room of the political parties. That's where your choices are compromised into mush. That's where your power is extracted from you. Is through this party politics where all the compromise takes place in secret, behind the doors. Where, for example, cigarette smokers are denied their liberty to smoke and extorted for now trillions of dollars, merely because the majority has a Supreme Court that will allow them to break the United States Constitution. They couldn't have done it in the past, and they can do it now, because there's no justice, and no integrity, and no honesty in the law. Laws can now veil themselves as, oh, we're protecting the children, when all they're about is, well, we just cut taxes for the rich, so we got to find some poor people to squeeze for the money, to pay for that. That's all it's about. It's transparently obvious. It's right in front of our faces. And the only reason why it happens is because we don't have representation. We don't have legislators who have to represent affirmative votes. They're legislators who have stolen half the population's right to representation and perverted it and diminished it. So it's even more of a majority rules functionality, and all semblance of principle gets broken and lost because there's no advocate who can stand up in that Congress and speak on behalf of the abused, to defend them against these liars and these cheaters, to call the liars and cheaters what they are, to point out quite clearly exactly what they're doing, exactly how they're just baiting and switching, they're stealing, they're lying. You need somebody to stop them from lying. And the only people who can do that are people willing to tell the truth. And if you let two parties decide who's going to be in office, there won't be any truth tellers. So anyway, yeah, that was a pretty good rant. Fairly good. I will give it a seal of adequacy. Yes, the Amendum seal of adequacy. Ooh, I think I'll get a rubber stamp. Yes, the Amendum seal of adequacy. That's an adequate video, worthy of publication on a crappy, noisy shitternet. Yes, it meets the standards of shitternet quality. Good. Yeah, I'm funny. Yeah, whatever. I am humorous now and then. I have a humorous quality. I give my humor the seal of adequacy. So anyway, till next time. Chipmunks go underneath this door. Little sneaky fuckers. Anyway, I have to put a little fence under there. Anyway, till next time and such. So forth and whatnot.